Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership one episode at a time. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Robin. A happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Robin, can I take 2 seconds this morning?
Please.
Because I want to wish my mother-in-law, Doris Walford, happy birthday, because today is her 102nd birthday.
Oh, wow.
So, I sit back and I go, what an incredible milestone. Imagine what Doris has seen in her lifetime. A lot of people don't know this about Doris, but she was a vet and served in World War II.
Wow.
She was also an architect. And if you text her today to wish her happy birthday, she'll answer you immediately on her iPhone. She's as sharp as a crack and up with technology. So a very happy birthday to Doris.
Wow. That's so cool.
That's
happy
incredible.
birthday,
Happy
Doris.
birthday.
Awesome. Also joined by LJ Aguinaga, who is not 102 years old. Hi, LJ.
Hi, how's it going?
Very,
I have not
very
seen
good.
many things in my lifetime, even though I like to think I'm quite knowledgeable about real estate.
Your life is young. There's still time for you to see and
Plenty
do
of
some
time for me.
things. Yeah, exactly. Let's get to our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center at 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. If you think you know the answer to our question, text us 514-790-0800 and include your name. And the first person with the correct response gets cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to their home. Our question this week: what do you call the extra one-time condo fee owners may have to pay for major repairs or shortfalls? 514-790-0800 if you think you know it. What is in the news this week? Well, economists are expecting that these high oil prices that we've been seeing could impact Canadian jobs and inflation. And it doesn't look like those oil prices are showing any signs of dropping anytime soon. I gassed up. I had to go to Ottawa this week, guys. I gassed up in Quebec at $1.89. And then I gassed up on my way home in Ottawa, much cheaper in Ontario, at $1.51. So that was nice, but still very expensive by Ontario standards. So what are we expecting for interest rates? The next announcement from the Bank of Canada, I think, is on the 19th. That doesn't make sense. That's a Sunday. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks, though, right? So what are we expecting?
So let's unpack this a little bit. So what we think is that Canada is heading into what we call a stagflation-like environment. And as you said, it's mainly driven by the oil price spikes that we've seen, because oil or gasoline affects absolutely everything that we consume. So think about those strawberries. How do you think the strawberries got to the store? So the key takeaways from these articles that have been coming out in the last week is inflation is rising, now expected to be around 2.4, and we know the threshold is 2 for the Bank of Canada. Unemployment is increasing, projected at 6.7 in 2026. Not good news. Economic growth is slowing, downgraded to 1.1%. And so what happens is it creates a real dilemma for the Bank of Canada. So if they raise rates, it could hurt a weak economy. If they cut rates, it risks fueling inflation. So the economy is weakening. We've witnessed it all, while inflation is rising. So this is probably the worst combo for policymakers. So what does this mean for mortgages and real estate? I'm so happy you asked, Robin. So number one, rates will stay higher for longer. This week, Fred and I kept getting emails from our lenders increasing fixed rate mortgages, 10, 20, 30 basis points this week. We're getting squeezed by both sides. So higher gas, cost of living equals less disposable income. Higher rates equals less borrowing power. housing demand, and I want to hear LJ on this. Slower growth and rising unemployment equals buyer hesitation. And finally, the Bank of Canada is kind of stuck, and this is the big one. The real story is economy says cut rates, inflation says raise rates. So what's likely going to happen? The Bank of Canada will hold rates longer than expected. So this rate increase or not increase, or this announcement in April, I think it's going to stay the course. They're going to move very, very cautiously because I don't know if everyone watched Donald Trump's speech on Wednesday night, but I don't think there's an exit strategy. I don't know where we're going with this thing. And if we can't get the oil to market, then it's going to continue to rise. And as much as Canada and he claimed the United States is an exporter of products, it's all about getting it to market. So what's going to happen is inflation is going to stick around. So all in all, these are not rosy times. So going back to buyer hesitation, love to hear LJ and how the market is reacting right now.
Of course. So I think, look, I think you hit the nail on the head here. The reality is we have two opposing forces right now, but like most things Canada does, we're going to approach this with caution. And until there's more clear data in any direction, we're not going to make a decision. So I believe we're going to hold rates exactly where they are until we see a much larger, much more dramatic pull in either direction. And we're being changed ultimately every single day with whatever Trump comes out, whatever's being pushed into media. So there's definitely a lot of opposing factors. How this is going to affect buyer hesitation, we've seen it affect the higher price points. Anything I'd say over $1.2 to $1.4 million, that is a lot of the more savvy buyers. We're a lot more cautious because of the significant impact it's going to have on the pricing. And they know that between the war, between the upcoming election in our province at closer to the end of the year, between just all of the external factors, they're going to think twice before they make a move to make sure that their decision might not have a $100, $200, $300,000 impact one way or another. In the lower price points, when we're talking about first-time home buyers, anything under $1 million, to be honest, even people who are moving up into those price points, they're still transacting. These are people who need a home, who need a place to live, who want to be homeowners, who are less concerned about the macroeconomics of what's going on in the world and more concerned about their day-to-day lives. And the true impact in that segment of the market is, yeah, sure, there might be a small correction, maybe $20,000, $30,000. It wouldn't be great for anybody who buys just before that happens, but it's also not going to be life-changing. And it's going to bounce back. Like with all things, as long as we stay in the market, there's no real impact, right? A lot of the times I've even done videos on this. It's like, what happens if prices pull back 30% in the market? Well, absolutely nothing happens to you unless you have to sell at that point in time. You just stay in the market. And then as things rebound, you continue to be in a profit position after the fact. So unless you were forced to sell at that exact specific time, which is a pretty large life-changing event that would have to happen, there's absolutely no impact. So because of that, not seeing a ton of hesitation in anything sub-million. As we get into the higher price points, we're starting to see a bit more hesitation.
You know what we
April
always say?
29th, by the way. April 29th, by the way, is the next announcement. I double checked.
You know what we always say? It's not timing the market, it's time in the market. So whether it's a house or whether it's your stock portfolio, personally, I would not sell anything right now. I would stay the course.
Fred, would you go with a fixed rate or a variable rate right now? What would you recommend for your clients?
Yeah,
Oh, he loves
wow.
that question. He loves that question.
No, but first of all, I just want to say about the Bank of Canada, their job is not to make your mortgage cheaper. It's not to grow the economy. It's not to keep your boss happy. It's to control the inflation, that's why probably we're going to be in a wait and see approach from the Bank of Canada. But right now, it's a good question. Should I go fixed because fixed had increased or should I go variable? I love to say it depends if you're comfortable with a variable or a fixed rate, but right now I would more intend to go maybe variable because it gives you flexibility in some option.
All
And the
right,
discount's pretty significant right now. I think if you're signing a variable rate, it's possibly at what, maybe 3.8, maybe 3.7, even in some cases still.
Even
Maybe
less
even
than that.
3.65, right? So
Even less
Right.
than
three.
that.
What's the lowest you've seen? Just for our listeners, I'm sure they're.
Well, we
Not
could
too-
see we see 3.65 variable for an insured mortgage, but you could, is roughly around 3.8, 3.85, 3.9, depends of the lender, depends of the condition. But obviously, it's a pretty good rate if you compare it to the fixed rate.
But that's just it, right? People want to understand the differences between one and the other, and it sounds like there's probably about 40 basis point different one way or another, which gives you a little bit of cushion depending on how things are going to go one way or another ultimately.
So
It's
even
got to
if
be
rates
careful because
increase, usually the Bank of Canada, when it increases rates, it's usually by 25 basis points at a time, right? So even if there is a rate increase, you're still coming out ahead versus if you had a fixed rate.
Yeah,
Correct.
for now, for now.
we had a conversation with a young couple this week. They're desperately trying to get into the market, and they're prepared to do absolutely anything to buy a house. Now, they qualify, but they don't qualify for the amount they were hoping they would qualify for. And it's amazing how they're willing to stretch themselves to the very limit. And, Fred and I, we're not here to tell them what to do. Here to try to get them financing. But if you stretch yourself to the very limit and you take a variable rate and all of a sudden rates start to go up, what's going to happen? You're going to be house poor, and there's nothing worse than being house poor. So you bought the house that you wanted, but you can't do anything else. Can't change the car, can't send the kids to camp. You can't, you just got to be really careful. Just because you qualify for it doesn't mean you should use it all.
Still to come, the spring has finally sprung in Montreal. It's time to turn your attention to the exterior of your home, maybe make some curb appeal improvements. But what should you focus your time, energy, and money on? LJ has the answer for you after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL. I'm Robin, that's Fred, that's Martin, that is LJ. Spring is finally here. I think it's safe to say that. It's no longer Fool's Spring. I think it's safe to say that spring has arrived in Montreal. I made my appointment for this week to swap my tires, so I feel like that's probably a good sign. LJ, curb appeal. This is something that people are thinking about. You're sitting outside, maybe having a coffee on your front porch for the first time in 6 months, and you're looking around and you're going, ooh, my yard could use some work. Ooh, I should probably repave my driveway. You start looking at all the things you need to improve outside. So outside maintenance matters not just when you're getting ready to sell, but as a homeowner in general. So what are the first things that homeowners should be looking for outside after a long Montreal winter?
The very first thing is a deep clean, is the reality, right? We have, tremendous amounts of snow. A lot of the time, you have garbage accumulation from passerbyers, pets, animals, all sorts of things. Maybe some leaves that got put under the snow before you were able to clean up, pine cones. There's also stuff that gets accumulated. So the first thing is doing a nice deep clean of that so we can actually see what we're working with. After that, is spring is usually a good time to check all the sealants around your property. So maybe some caulking, any silicone joints, stuff of that nature as well. Once we've done that, we do want to check the driveway, obviously. We want to check your stairs, your front steps, depending on if they're concrete, if they're other materials, see what kind of condition they're in. Any potentially loose handrails that may have gotten loose over the winter, or accumulation of salt, etc. And then after that, we can get into obviously some of the bigger things. But the very first thing I tell everybody is let's do a deep clean so that way we can actually understand what we're working with and have a clear idea of where we're going to go from here.
So let's say you are selling your property. Buyers are pulling up for a visit. The first thing they see is the exterior of the property. You could have the most beautiful interior in the whole wide world, but if the exterior is ugly, that's a bad first impression. So what are the first things that people notice? What are those red flags?
First thing I'd say is a messy driveway. You'd be surprised how many people have all sorts of old broken toys that stay in the driveway. Garbage, a ton of garbage cans that are the first thing you see when you're pulling up to the property. Broken down cars. We've seen all sorts of things that really just make it look like a junkyard as you're approaching. And then you can get obviously into some broken steps, like we just mentioned, untreated lawns, ugly front door that hasn't been painted in the last 30 years, paint that's chipping off any of the siding, siding that's missing. These are all things that constitute something that would be a red flag because as you approach a home, we obviously like to make a first impression of anything that we're looking at. And if you say, well, if this is how they're treating the exterior of their property, this is the loving care they're putting into the exterior. I can't imagine they're putting a ton of love and care into the interior of the property. And that's where we start the buyer psychology going down the wrong avenue. That's the complete opposite thing you want to be having them think about before they enter your home. So that's why the first impressions here are so important, so critical, in at very least not hurting you. Even if it's not fantastic, at least like, okay, it looks fine, looks standard, and we can move on to the interior. We can potentially make a larger impression.
Why is it people want to display their worldly possessions on their front lawn? Why is it you drive by and there's a washing machine on the balcony? Sometimes I just shake my head. You're gonna try to sell this thing, or are you doing a lawn sale?
This is somebody who promised, I believe, a partner that it would be out of the house, and the path of least resistance was putting it on the balcony or out front without actually getting out of the
No, but
lot.
I've seen washer and dryers on the front porch. I'm like, are
Yeah.
you doing your laundry on your front porch, or are you just too lazy to put that in a truck and get rid of it?
Or even just put it to the curb. Somebody's usually going to come pick it up.
It's
Yeah.
amazing when you put stuff out on the curb and you say free stuff, how it just disappears.
Yeah, we've had even like dumpster bins out front that we filled up with stuff we were getting rid of, and you see people slowing down, taking a look, seeing what's in there. So you never know. Your trash could be another person's treasure. Um, so what are some simple low cost improvements homeowners can make to their exterior? Because I think low cost is what everybody's looking for right now. Because I mean, everything is just so expensive.
So the first thing, like I mentioned, is a thorough deep clean. Get yourself a blower if you don't have one, or a couple rakes, obviously, and start putting everything together. You can rent some of this equipment a lot of times as well. You don't even have to buy it or get it from a friend. Usually somebody in your circle has one of these things. After that, a quick paint job. So if the door is really like it's chipping away, if some of your siding is looking really flimsy, if you're missing a piece of siding, like I'd said, usually it's just one piece. It could be an aluminum or a vinyl cover. It's not particularly expensive. It just needs to go back in to cover whatever's missing. After that, we get into slightly more expensive things. If there are any maybe visible foundation cracks, you're going to want to have those repaired. You're usually looking at about $1,000 a crack for that. But that's usually something that makes buyers, especially first-time buyers, quite nervous because you could have potentially a water infiltration, and then that can have other effects. Doesn't usually lead to mold and everything else that people's brains go to, but it could. And immediately, if you can resolve that, we can help cover any potential issues on that front. So deep clean, paint job are really the two least expensive things that I recommend we do when a home could use some TLC.
How important is landscaping? Like, obviously, you should try to keep your lawn mowed. You don't want a jungle growing out front, but is it worth it to get hedges, professionally pruned if you've got cedars, things like that?
I mean, it has to look taken care of, is what it comes down to, right? So does it have to be professionally trimmed? No, but if you can trim it kind of straight, and making it look like it's been cared for over the years, that's gonna be perfectly fine. If not, you can usually get somebody to come do a job like that for you. They're not terribly expensive, or you rent the equipment, you get a buddy, you find somebody to help you out with that. The question usually goes down when it comes to landscaping. You're like, do we have to do all these plants and these flowers and these pots and all that stuff? And the answer is no, you don't have to. A well manicured lawn, something that's been mowed and in good order and good shape is really perfect. If you want to do something simple, tulips are great perennials. If we're selling in the spring, they look wonderful. You plant them once, they come back every year, and that's it, that's all. But the landscaping, again, it's going to very much depend on the price point that we're looking at here. But in anything entry level, as long as it looks clean, everybody's happy.
I'm gonna be cliche Martin today, and there's an old adage: you only have one chance to make a first impression. So, do what you have to do so that when someone pulls up to your house, you go, "Wow, what a great looking house, well manicured. I can project myself and my family living there." But if it looks like a junkyard, they're gonna turn around and go, "You know what? It's not for us," and they never went inside.
I've had clients not walk in. It's happened to me probably a handful of times. We're like, oh, this is no, we don't have to visit. And I'm like, we have to at least go in. We made the visit, then we booked the appointment. We have to at least try. I'll go in if you don't want to, but yeah.
Wow. Okay, so if somebody's planning to sell in the next couple of months, what would you say, LJ, should be, the top 2, 3 items on their priority list to get ready to make their house look nice from the outside?
Deep clean. Fix any missing exterior siding panels. If you have brick that's in really rough shape that needs fresh mortar, something like that, make sure you get the joints done so that it's not falling apart, so that it's safe to be around. Anything that is a safety hazard, if anything like it looks like the gutters are about to fall off or anything of that nature, again, make sure that it is well fastened so we don't have any concerns of that nature. And then a quick paint job would also go a long way. So those are probably the top 3, top 4 things.
Excellent. If you're not sure if there's more work to do, perhaps on the exterior of your home, give LJ a call. He'll take a look. He'll tell you what to focus on, what you should prioritize, where to spend your time and money. You can reach him at 514-500-4040. Coming up, rate versus loan conditions. What's more important? Fred and Martin will have the answer for you after the news. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. I'm Robin Flynn. That's LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. We're also joined by Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Rate versus loan conditions. Guys, you've been hammering this forward for about as long as we've been doing the show. The rate is not the only thing you should be looking at on your mortgage. But what's more important, the conditions or the rate? So first of all, let's talk about why are people so obsessed with the interest rate?
It's the first question we get, and I hear Fred all day long. I hear it, what's the best rate? And then I hear Fred's answer. He goes, rates matter, they impact the payment, the interest that you're going to pay. But what most people don't realize is rate is only half the story. In many cases, the conditions of the mortgage, the fine print, which most people don't take the time to read, will have a bigger impact than a difference of 5 to 10 basis points. So, what's the obsession with rate? People focus on rate because it's easy to compare, it's very visible. It feels like win when you get a lower rate. So, if Bank A offers, say, 414 and Bank B offers 424, most people will stop right there and say, I'm done. I'm taking the lowest rate. But that's working in a vacuum, and that makes, which in a vacuum, that would make sense. But mortgages don't exist in a vacuum because what you really have to factor in is, once you've taken that decision and you've foregone reading what the conditions are, did you ask yourself, are you going to sell? Or are you going to refinance? Are you going to break the mortgage before the end of the term? And these are all the questions I hear Fred asking these clients because the first thing they go, what's your best rate? And Fred says, I'm not a rate guy. Fred
Well,
always says, I'm a conditions guy. So what I want to find for you is a loan with a good rate, but more importantly, good conditions for your situation.
yeah, I was about to say that. I say that all the time. It says, tell me what your needs are, where you're standing, and then I will help you how to find the right product at a good rate with the right lender. It all comes down to that. And sometimes, a difference, as Martin says, from point 10 on the rate, we're talking about $10 to $20 difference per month. You know, we have people go to Starbucks every day, like spending $10 to $20 every day, which is, and when it comes to their mortgage, they say, oh, I just want the best rate. I don't think it's the right approach to do because you have to remember that the biggest complaint in the mortgage industry across Canada is the penalty that chartered bank apply to their mortgage when you're breaking that contract. And again, in Quebec, we sign in front of a notary, in Ontario, in front of an attorney. But I just want to remind people that you're signing a contract with a bank. And if you're breaking that contract, you have to face those penalties. And usually you could count them, especially on fixed rate. We call that the IRD, the interest rate differential. And you were not counting in hundreds of dollars, we're counting in thousands of dollars, which is at the end of the day, by saving $10 a month or $20 a month is great, but you may face a penalty between 10 to 20,000. And trust me on this one, I see so many of my clients back in the day saying, oh my God, that bank, or I'm not going to say the word, but they charging me that penalty. It's crazy. Of course, but why did you sign with them? Why did you look at different option or something maybe more flexible or something with better condition? And that's so important when you're looking at a mortgage. It's the first mistake people does. And don't get me wrong, we have good rate as a broker, but the first mistake they do is they're just focusing on rate when they should focus on product and condition.
What are conditions?
Yeah,
What are
exactly.
conditions?
So conditions, so mortgage conditions, we're talking about what's behind the rate. So behind the rate, so the big ones are the penalties that Fred just mentioned, what it costs if you break your mortgage before the end of the term. What are the prepayment privileges? So in other words, if you want to do double payments on a monthly basis, or if you want to do a lump sum during every year of your mortgage, how fast can you actually pay down your mortgage without there being a penalty? What's the portability of your mortgage? Can you transfer it if you move? What kind of flexibility do you have? Can you increase your payments? Can you skip a payment? And what are the restrictions? And I want to hear, Fred, what's called a collateral charge that the chartered banks put on your mortgage. So some products lock you in more than others. And I want to hear, Fred, on collateral charge.
Well, it's just a collateral charges. Let's say you borrow 500,000 from bank, whatever, bank Hey, let's say, but they're going to take a lien on your property for 100% or 125% of the value. And that's what we call the collateral charge. And often bank says, "Well, don't worry about it. It's fine. You borrow 500, it's okay. You don't worry about that collateral charge." But most of the time that collateral charge could block you to transfer your mortgage at no cost to another lender. Also could block you to have a second rank mortgage sometimes because the lien on the property, it's more than 100% of the value. In fact, you have to call back the bank and say, hey, listen, I borrow 500. Could you reduce your lien on my property? And the collateral charge bank will use it to say, oh, listen, if you need more money during the next 5 years, you don't have to go back to see the notary. Come and see me. I'll give you some money. Yeah, but at what rate, what terms? Like a collateral charge is something that I love to say if you borrow 500, take a lien for 500 on your property. Don't let the bank take a lien for 100% or 125%. That's my opinion because you're closing your option if eventually you need more financing. Like this is something important and it comes down to the condition, you know.
So, why do banks do this? Why do they have different conditions in place? Why isn't there just one set of terms and conditions for every single mortgage?
Well, why do you think they do it? So
To
this
make
isn't
money.
random. This is not random. Banks price mortgages based on risk and behavior. If they give you a really low rate, they often limit your flexibility, increase the penalties, and lock you in more tightly. Why? Because they're protecting themselves. They're not protecting you, they're protecting themselves. So they're betting that you'll stay for the full term. They're locking you in. Or if you leave, you'll pay for it via a penalty. So when you see a rate that's too good to be true, it often is after you read the fine print, after you take into consideration the conditions. So it's not only about rate. You got to read the fine print and see what you're signing because, as Fred said, at notary, you're legally bound. And so after you've signed at notary, it's too late and you will live with the conditions that you agreed upon in your mortgage commitment.
And I could add to that, the statistic says that 7 people out of 10 end up breaking their mortgage for multiple reasons. One of the first reason, sadly, divorce. The second reason, they want to refinance to pay debts, and they want to sell the property. There's so many reasons why you don't think about it today, but you would end up breaking your mortgage. And often the person who says, "Well, don't worry about it, Fred. I'm good. I will never break my mortgage. I have a good job. I have money a bit aside. It's fine." They're usually the first one to break it because something happened. They need to pull out equity to reinvest to buy another property, which is you got to be careful, obviously banks, we need them, but again, you can make a better choice and not only focusing on rates.
So, instead of calling us and saying, what's your best rate? The real question you should be asking is, what mortgage best fits my situation? Because if you're planning to move, flexibility matters. If you're planning to pay it down fast, prepayment matters. And if your life is a little uncertain, you're not happy at work, you're not happy in your relationship, the penalties matter. So the mortgage has to fit your life. Because the best mortgage is not always the lowest rate. It's the one that works when life happens. And life happens daily.
That it does. To find out more about your lending options, to find out what the best conditions are for you, not just the best rate, get in touch with Fred and Martin. You can visit their website, fredandmartin.com, and book an appointment with them directly there. Coming up, our property of the week, plus the answer to our trivia question of the week. That's coming up after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin, that's Fred, that's Martin, that is LJ. Property of the week time. And I'm excited about this one because we're bringing things into my hood. LJ, what do you got for us on the South Shore this week?
Well, if you're a growing family looking for space, versatility, and a home that's move-in ready, 180 Rue Garand in Chateauguay is worth a serious look. 6 bedrooms across 3 floors, a renovated basement with income potential, a backyard pool, and a quiet street close to schools, parks, and Highway 30. The home is not in the flood zone, which is super important because you're close to the water but not affected by it. We're listed at $650,000. Call me at LJ Realties to book your visit. LJ Realties, trusted local results.
I saw this property on Instagram. It is absolutely gorgeous. That kitchen, I can picture myself cooking in that kitchen. It is
Uh,
stunning.
It's a
LJ,
beautiful
did,
home.
did I hear well? 6 bedroom?
6 bedrooms, yeah, two
Wow.
per floor. So really, you get to divide everybody up however you'd like to make it work and make it functional. So, yeah. Robin, what would be your favorite restaurant in the area? I'm gonna throw it back to you.
I mean, I always talk about El Cactus, which is a great Mexican place right on the water, especially in the summer. They have like a multi-level terrace right on the water, which is really, really good. It's, owned by like this like mom and pop from Mexico, basically. So the food is very, very authentic and delicious. I'm also a big fan of Boulevard. They have it's a bar, but they have a surprisingly delicious menu. They spend a lot of time and attention on their food. So they've got some great flatbread sandwiches, some great salads, burgers, your typical bar food, but really, really elevated and delicious.
El Cactus is only a 4-minute drive from this home.
Ooh, that's a huge sell. Excellent. Good news. Okay, so check it out. It's on your Instagram, right? So if you go to LJ Realties on Instagram, you can get a full tour of the property. So you can go check it out. Okay, let's get to the answer to our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Our question this week was, what do you call that extra one-time fee that condo owners may have to pay for major repairs or shortfalls? That would be a special assessment. Never a fun time when you receive
Yeah,
a
I can tell
special
you,
assessment.
co-owners and condo owners don't like special assessments. And
I
that's
bet.
why the contingency fund is so important. So when you're actually buying a condo, make sure you look at the financials and see the state of the contingency fund, and then also read the notes of the meetings, especially the AGM. Are there any special projects in the pipeline? Because the last thing you want to do is move in and all of a sudden get hit by $10,000 special assessment because you didn't see it in the notes.
Yeah, that's why I think LJ said it a few weeks ago that low condo fees are actually a red flag when you're shopping for a condo because it means they may not have the necessary reserve fund to cover a major shortfall at some point.
They likely won't.
Oh boy.
Mm,
Okay, so congratulations to Maxine and Villeray for correctly answering the question this week. You're getting some cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to your door. That pretty much does it for us this week. Time flies when you're having fun. Isn't that always the case? If you have a question for the guys and you want to have that question and answer featured on the show, you can email us at underoneroofmtl@gmail.com. You can also reach out to LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where do people go to get in touch with you?
Check out our website, ljrealties.com, or on our socials with the handle LJ Aguinaga. That's LJAGUINAGA, or LJ Realties with an IES at the end. You can also book a meeting directly with me with meetwithlj.com, or you can call or text me at 514-500-4040. And as always, if you're looking to free up some time, if you have a real estate property that you're unsure what you want to do with, you're not sure if you need to rent it out, if you need to optimize it, if you need to, what your next steps are ultimately, and you're a bit frustrated, call our property management company. We'll come in, we'll give you a consultation, we'll help guide you on what we think the best use of the property is and what we would do if we were the owners of the property ultimately. And there might be something we can do together. And if not, we're happy to give you that free advice. You can reach us at plexdr.com, or you can call Thierry directly at 514-709-6397.
Perfect. Fred, Martin, where do people go to get in touch with you?
Well, I suggest people call Fred and ask him, what's your best rate? And then sit high and hold onto your hat because the conditions are going to come down the pipeline. No, really, the best way to get in touch with us is through the website, very similar to LJ. Our phone numbers are there, our email addresses are there, and you can actually book us directly through the website. So it's fredmartin.com, and remember, call Fred.
Yeah,
Call
and
Fred.
of course, and I'm more than happy to speak to our clients and give them advice, and sometimes we don't even talk about mortgages. It's just great. Like they just want to talk a little bit. Hey, Fred, my mortgage come to renewal in a week, or in a month, or in a year. What do you think? What should I do? Is it too late? I'll be more than happy to answer their question and see how can I help them.
Don't wait until your mortgage is coming up for renewal in a week, though. I mean, obviously, if that's the case, Fred and Martin can help you, but maybe give it a few months when you give them a
No.
call, when your mortgage is coming up in like 3 to 6 months, right?
Yeah,
Well, after
great point.
15 years, I hear them all, but sometimes, if you come in a week and you have a needs, there's option there. Take a open mortgage, leave it like that. Let's look at your file, and then you'll take a better decision.
Yeah, that's a great point, Robin, because right now the lenders are very overwhelmed, the underwriters are overwhelmed, and the delays are longer than usual. And so if you've got a mortgage renewing next week, call us today. And even next week is too short term because right now the lag time is anywhere between 2, 3, 4 weeks for a renewal, for a refinance. But for a purchase, obviously they prioritize that because, as LJ knows, there's a within the contract you've got a certain amount of days to demonstrate you've got financing. So those always are always front loaded with the underwriters. But right now the lag time is significant.
And notaries are backed up too. Once you get everything squared away, then you need a notary appointment. Sometimes that can take 3 or 4 weeks. So
Absolutely,
you really
same
want to
problem.
you really want to move quickly. Yeah. If you missed anything, you can listen to this show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, or even on YouTube. Go to LJ Realty's on YouTube and you can listen to this podcast there as well. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. Have a wonderful Sunday. Happy Easter, everybody.